everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. More like underpriced JPEGs these days, actually. I'm Carly Riley. I am so incredibly excited for today's episode. I have Micah Johnson on the podcast. For anybody who listens to this show, I think I've talked about Aku and Akutars for like the last 3 episodes, raving about them. Been very excited about this project. So just so honored, Micah, to have you here to really dive into it more.
No, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking about it and always appreciate a chance to talk about it. So
cool. You're outside on a beautiful day, so things
finally. First time outside all day too, so I'll take
extra
it.
Good. Yeah. Get the whatever vitamin D. So
right.
For anybody who doesn't know, Micah is a former MLB player turned artist turned, I don't know, CEO. You have a whole company built around Aku at this point. I have not been shy about my love for this project. It's really been a couple of things that I think drew me to Akutars and Aku when I first discovered it. Like such an obviously genuine why. You see so many projects out here where they're not intending to be rug pulls, but on some level, you know, they're trying to ride the hype of NFTs, and Akutar doesn't feel like that at all. It's like, I know why this character should exist in the world. The art and it's, you know, there are these, like not GIFs, but they're animated, you know, they've got music to them. Like it's so evocative. So you're immediately like, oh, I see what this world could be, which really drew me in. You have this incredible community that are just like big time diamond handers, you know, it feels like. And you just like, we're not chasing hype. Like it's so amazing to me is you've been building all this stuff. You've gotten some mainstream attention, but I feel like the NFT community like didn't catch on to you totally. Do you feel that way?
Until we lost $34 million.
Yeah. The best marketing move you could have done, Micah, lose $34 million. Everyone's paying attention. Well, I wasn't going to start there, but let's start there. That is why some people may have heard about that. Y'all had a smart contract problem, $34 million currently locked up in a smart contract, never to be accessed by anyone. What happened? What have you learned coming off of that process?
Arguably, it's probably like 17 million now, the way the ETH is going. So
yeah, there you go.
Glass half full kind of guy.
Right side.
No, I mean, it was a massive learning experience. Hurt, obviously, personally. I think it's something that in the moment, we have had a film crew with us a lot of the times. We've been since Aku started. Not since it started, but at the point when we realized like we're onto something special here. That day told them to not come. So I think that's the biggest regret of it all. Because it was look, nothing you can do about it, right? Look, I played a sport that was predicated on failure. And I woke up every day, played 162 games out of a year, knowing I was going to fail that day. So failing and overcoming adversity is never a thing. It's not a new thing to me. You have to move forward. Sure, you're always going to think about it. It'll linger in your mind, but you have to move forward. And when that happened, look, it was as a non-technical founder, you have dependencies that, you know, on technical. And sometimes, you know, things happen and you just don't, you don't do the proper things needed. You know, in this case, getting a contract audited and that whole thing. And mistakes happen. In this case, very fortunately, people were able to get their refunds. And we issued refunds, personally issued close to $2.5 million with an additional refunds on top of the refunds that came out of the smart contract. Our money was locked up, is locked up, and it was a learning experience for me in life to move correctly and not quickly, and to have different levels of checks in place along the way as you build, even across the board in life, and it was an unfortunate situation. I think that will be a learning experience for a lot of people entering this space. The fragility of this technology that it's in beta still, it seems like, and the level of detail required in this space and help that you need in this space. And so it was, I take it as a learning experience, and how do we go from here, and how do we shape the company from here, and move forward, and which, we've done. No lie, it's hard, of course it sucked. I have to make decisions now, and I have to make trade-offs now from a business perspective that I, wouldn't have had to make. And so I burden that personally. But yeah.
I think from what I've seen, there's been a lot of grace from the community, very rightfully so, because I think people recognize that, okay, you are a non-technical founder, but more importantly, like you so clearly are not rug pulling anybody here. Like, you're so clearly an incredibly genuine builder who's in this for the long haul. And so I feel like that came through to people. And so that was my impression. I don't know if you feel like that's how the community has responded, but I do just want to push on, you're like, what can we do? There were some people who flagged this on Twitter beforehand. And I think that there were some people who were frustrated because they're like, you had folks calling out that there were bugs in the smart contract. What was the breakdown there of you had these warnings and they didn't get heeded?
No, so there was a lot of people that reached out. I won't say a lot. I was in the heat of the moment. There was one person in particular, Hassan, had reached out, got him on the phone rather quickly, very quickly. There was a moment the site went down. We were able to get him on the phone in that moment. And when that happened, it's decision time in real time, become wartime CEO. First instinct, shut it down. I don't know anything. If it's possible, cancel the contract, whatever it is. Developer walks him through the contract, while on the phone. They check out this withdrawal function, so that basically our developer had put it in there so that if in 3 days, if we die that day, everybody would get their funds back. So it checks out, Hassan checks it out. Okay, it looks good. Incredible dudes to help us out the whole time. Puts out another tweet saying it's all good, reviewed it, looks good. That wasn't the issue though. And so it wasn't like we, was flagged and we said, forget this. It was, let's check it out, do what you need to do, cancel this if you have to, no big deal. Cancel this, checked it out, everything checked out. The issue was the fact that there was just wrong code from the level.
Was it accounting error? Was it essentially like accounting error?
That's right. So funds from Jump Street weren't going to be able to be withdrawn. People would have been able to receive their refunds, but yeah, our funds from Jump Street weren't going to make it. So that's what it boiled down to. The stuff around, we dismissed it. That wasn't how it went down. It wasn't like this was a thing that we could stop it. It was done from that whole thing. Mm-hmm. And Hassan was incredibly helpful the whole time. Sat on the phone and walked me through it. More importantly, understanding a whole different perspective on where it was. And there was a moment where, he realized, wow, actually, you guys, it's locked.
I think the other reason you received a lot of grace, again, rightfully so, again, from my perspective, is you made right by the community. It happened to get out. There was this error in the smart contract people knew. But if you were just a community member who had bought into this drop, you were made right. Was that there's millions of dollars locked up. Has that impacted business plans for the immediate term or moving forward? Your money you're going to reinvest? No, y'all are doing pretty well.
No, because I've been building for a year. I'm not going to go spend money that I don't have. That's just a bad business practice in general. So from everything we've been developing was already, paid for. Akutars were expensive build, pure and simple. It's over a 40-person team worked on the Akutars. We're not going to go spend money that we don't have. Chapter money, was reinvested into a company, formed a company, and over $15 million in primary sales and chapter money. Ready to be deployed into development. Sure, it would have helped, but the most important thing that people need to understand about what's $34 million go to, right? $34 million is going towards film development, ownership of the IP, develop it as far as you can, as big as you can, as long as you can. So where does this trade-off has to happen? Trade-off has to happen now on my end. You're going to have to give up some things around the IP. You're going to have to give up some, it becomes negotiations at this point with less leverage. That's a personal thing that for me, I have to deal with, which, it is what it is. You'll have to dilute yourself. You'll have to do certain things, but From a development standpoint, back to business, for everything.
So, and this will be my last question sort of around this, and it'll segue us nicely into the IP front, because I think that is what stood out for me. You know, you could argue virtually every project in the NFT space is angling to be IP. You have maybe have some exceptions where it's clearly like a community membership. Fly Fish Club is maybe, you know, just getting you into a cool club in New York. But in general, they're all trying to be IP. And I think there is something magical about Aku, the character, the look of the NFTs. Like, it just has that spark of like, this could be big IP. And I think that comes along pretty rarely. I'm curious on this front, like, are there sort of trade-offs you've made, or was this sort of situation that went down partly like y'all are so focused on the IP building part that you're thinking less about the tech, and you've now recalibrated that to be more balanced? Was that a part of it at all, you think? No,
it was
just a mistake.
Honest, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
Because the team, we brought the team in to our time zone to work on this for several months, and then brought the team to London to work on this together leading up to this, to mitigate all mistakes. Yeah. So everything was in place to it wasn't like we were focused on IP building, because I'm the creative. Like it's me, and now it's Kiri Hart, Stephen Feeder. Like, I'm the creative. There's a whole bunch of other people under the hood, you know, working on this, and everything was done with the tech in mind. It's just a mistake that, was made.
It's increasingly obvious that everything will become tokenized, and NFT marketplaces needs robust financial reporting, performance analysis, and the peace of mind that they are compliance ready. Guilded's NFT Ops is a one-stop financial reporting solution for growing NFT platforms. Guilded has developed marketplace-specific modules to track the financial performance of NFT creators, including revenue tracking, collection metrics, royalty payments, and revenue share. Customers of NFT Ops gain full access to accounting tools and powerful APIs for custom integrations that simplify operations, streamline reporting, and produce tax-ready data. So no wonder why so many top brands like CoinMarketCap, Gitcoin, Nifty's, and POAP trust Guilded to automate complex reporting workflows. Visit gilded.finance/bankless to learn more. Living a bankless life requires taking control over your own private keys. And that's why so many in the Bankless Nation already have their Ledger hardware wallet. And brand new to the Ledger lineup of hardware wallets is the Ledger Nano S Plus, a huge upgrade to the world's most popular hardware wallet. With more memory and a larger screen, the Nano S Plus makes it easy to navigate and verify your transactions. And the paired Ledger Live desktop app gives you increased transparency as to what is about to happen with your NFT. What you see is what you sign. The Nano S Plus gives you the smoothest possible user experience while you're doing all of your crypto things. So go to the Ledger website to check out the features of the new Ledger Nano S Plus and join the waitlist to get yours. And don't forget about the Crypto Life card, also powered by Ledger. The CL card is a crypto debit card that hooks right into the Ledger Live app, right next to all the DeFi apps and services that you're already used to doing, like swapping tokens and staking. So if you don't have a Ledger hardware wallet, go to ledger.com, grab a Ledger, and take control over your crypto.
You just mentioned Kiri Hart, some hires you've made, both ex-Lucasfilms, I believe.
Yeah, so, Kiri led the whole divisions across Star Wars, some creative, and then Steven led film.
I mean, that's incredible. What was the moment? Was there a moment, or was it a slow build that, you know, in building Aku's, that you were like, oh shit, like, we have something here? Was it the moment of conception? Like, when did you realize, like, oh my God, we're going to get ex-Lucas people to help build our story?
When my daughter started seeing space helmets, and she's 2.5, and started saying that's the Aku helmet, and like just,
wow.
and every time she saw a helmet of anything, it was Aku's. That's when I knew this was special, because you can't force IP. Like, you can't force a kid to think that this and know Aku's name, or kids to like Aku. You can't force a kid to do anything in life, let alone like a character or recognize a character. So that's when I knew it was really, really special, beyond any monetary association with it.
And when was that moment in the timeline of you building this character?
Oh, it was pretty early on. That's when I knew it was big. Early on is in,
like,
chapters.
Before you've dropped an NFT, or like in the process of the chapters?
No, because I've been dropping NFTs since early 2020.
Yeah.
This was a moment of, like, I always believe in myself. Like, I'm not going to do something that I don't think is big. And I think Aku, I released it as art. I'm not going to lie to you. Leading up to the first drop of chapter 1 in February of 2021, I didn't do any marketing. I was just like, we got this drop coming on Nifty. Like, this is something I care about. Like, check it out if you want to. And then the summer, my partner, started reaching out to everybody, Pusha T and Upscale Vandal, and they evangelized it and really got everybody excited. But for me, it was more a personal message I want to get out to the world. And as an artist, marketing wasn't my thing. It was just, this is what it is. But I don't know. I think having the kids see it and recognize it and really appreciate and to be consumed in it is what's special about it. Like, you can't fake that. You can't fake that.
Okay, let's do a proper timeline. I'll give people a little nugget here, which is you just referenced that first Aku drop. I think it sold like more than $1 million in 7 minutes in like February 2021. You said, so like that also had to be a pretty wild moment. I don't know. We'll talk about maybe pre that moment in your art history, but like, damn, to be an artist, I mean, make more than $1 million in your art. Was that like a really like wow feeling?
No, it was just back to work.
Oh,
More pressure.
God.
More pressure. When you do something like that, it's people investing in you as an artist.
Yeah.
So why would I go do, I'm a millionaire now. And like my brain, there's a sense of responsibility when someone takes time out of their day to show up and invest their hard-earned money into the thing that you're doing. So like immediately, this is dead on a serious. The drop ended, and it was me and my boy Dirk who were working on the Aku chapters. Call him immediately, like drop 8th minute, like boom, hey, let's get to work. Like, we got to go. And it's just like, okay, what's next? Let's think about boom, boom, boom. It wasn't a moment where I was like, oh, this feels good to chill. Like, no, because like that's when the pressure starts.
What about a moment though of like validation of, wow, you made this career from being a professional athlete to an artist. Okay, it's resonating for folks. Oh, I can make this work. Like, did it have that? You're just like a worker. You're just like, just get down and do it.
Work.
Just work.
Yeah.
So, and I think I read somewhere, and let me know if this is right, that your plan had been to release you released 10 chapters, which are really 10 pieces of art, 10 NFT series, collections. Over the course of, your initial plan was to release it over the course of some longer time frame, and then you condensed that because of the success. Is that right?
Yeah. I just think that the original idea was to do 10 chapters over a couple of years. Just because NFTs weren't mass adoption at that point. So I was like, okay, in order to prove market fit and like people like this, it's going to take a while, especially doing it in this format. And then of the success, really wanted to get through 10, and we just pushed it. Like, we really pushed it. And shout out to the whole creative team that, and we really got into it.
And how many people in your first drop, how many people were on your creative team?
2, me and Dirk.
2. Okay. It's you and Dirk. And tell me, who's Dirk? What's his
Dirk,
role?
Dirk Vandermeer. He was originally, was like, hey, do you want to, help build this character out? I drew the designs on it. Like, he's a 3D art. I call him a 3D generalist superstar. He could do about anything from modeling to texturing to asset building, to environment building, you name it. And it's like, no problem, and we didn't know what it was going to become. And to this day, we're still rocking, and he's really kind of my right hand when it comes to the quality and creative control across the board. And then we brought in Jason Bryce, who is a sequencer. That's when we transitioned to Unreal Engine, and really got into that with Jason. And it was just us 3, sometimes 2. Yeah.
Well, I want to, you're touching on points I want to talk about on Unreal Engine. I want to talk about that, but I do want to maybe stay. Well, let's do a better chronology here, just in case there are folks who haven't tracked your story or haven't listened to me tell what I know of your story on this podcast before. So 2018, you leave the MLB and
yeah.
Is that when do you make a determination in 2018? Like, I'm going to go be an artist and pursue this thing full time? Or like, how did that transition from I'm a professional athlete to I'm a professional artist happen?
Oh, not luxurious by any means. I didn't make much money playing baseball because of, I was always up and down, and you don't make that much money in the minor leagues. A couple $100 every 2 weeks wasn't anything. And so when I retired, I didn't have a skill set, never had a job before. So it was the first year I was cool. I was chilling. There was nothing, I was playing golf and practicing painting.
Yeah, were you on the PGA tour? Did I hear?
I was trying to be. I thought I could be. Oh man. So I gave it a shot, but I couldn't break 80. So I figured I might as well figure out what's next. But I was just practicing, and then it kind of hit like you got to figure something out. And that's when I really started diving into my craft and practicing painting in my garage, 2019, and didn't have much success either. It was just creating and exploring different styles and different mediums. And then late 2019, I discovered NFTs, digital crypto art is what it was called. I don't think NFTs was like a very popular term. It was crypto art. And released my first NFT in early 2020. Jimmy bought it and supported me in 3 ETH, $900. And really just fell in love with the fact that, like, in this world, I started animating my paintings. I could release my art freely and connect directly with collectors and have, real ownership over, my creativity and the things I was putting out into the world. And I didn't need the validation of somebody to say, like, this was worth this much or, it belongs in this gallery. And then I really wanted to get into a gallery. And I really thought, I really want to take my art. I look at my paintings are completely different. You don't really see them in the NFT world, but my paintings and my pursuits in that world are much different. I like the traditional route, like thinking about museums and being in institutions and that whole thing. So I was able to leverage some of my success in the NFT world to get into a very renowned gallery and then, kind of realize the power of leveraging NFTs to do things in the Web 2 world.
Did you ever think about being an artist when you were growing up, or did you always think about being a professional athlete when you were growing up?
Baseball. Yeah.
When did that switch happen? Like, when did that switch happen of, like, maybe I'll go try and be a professional artist? It sounds like 2019, but when did you start getting into art? And did it ever occur to you, like, hey, maybe I'll just go, like, be an insurance guy? Like I'll just get, like, a normal job? Or were you always going to do something interesting like this?
Always needed to do something that I could see myself get better at. It was never about, like, art. I got into art in 2016 when I was with the Dodgers, but it was never about the art itself. It was about the practice of getting better at something every day. And art is something that you can see yourself get better at every day. Like, if you draw an eye for 365 days in a row, that eye's going to look better on day 365 than it did on day one. And you can see the evolution occur over to time. And that's what I fell in love with about art. Same thing about baseball. I didn't love the games. Like, the games, I love competing. I love the games for sure. But practice and the times before, like, that was my thing. Like 6 a.m., 5 a.m., like hitting off a tee, like going into, like, hit off a tee at 3 a.m. That was my thing. And so I'm just a person that really likes the grind and likes the process much more than the end result. And that's for me, that was art. And it was something very tangible for me.
That's so interesting. And I was actually going to ask you what you felt like you took most from professional sports into the NFT world. Like, what, and that makes so much sense. It's that concept almost of, what's the term? Like, deliberate practice. Is that a concept you've, like, heard before?
Yeah, you have to be, like, from a very young age, I've been very intense since I was very little. And I released this NFT recently on Artifacts, and they had home videos of me when I was like 3, very intense, like, kid on, like, I wanted to play Major League Baseball. And that intensity is just this thing that I carried over to, it was going to be carried over to anything. If I did do insurance, like, I would do it very intensely, and try to do things, differently. But that's just kind of how I'm wired.
What % of your day now, I mean, are you still doing, like, actively making art on a regular basis, or are you, it's your business, growing this IP, building this brand?
Business.
This is something I think about, because I definitely am like how can I get better at my craft of podcasting, call it. And it's
You're good at it, though.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I appreciate that.
You're really good.
I want to get better. Like, I want to get so much better, but it's hard because I think I've compared it to sports, or thinking about sports. I was never a great athlete, but, like, where maybe you have coaches or even art or violin or something where it's very clear, like, here are your scales, hit 10 things off the tee box, whatever. And that doesn't translate perfectly into being a CEO. Like, I'm just going to do these 6 reps. Right. Do you think about that? How do you think about practice and getting better in a business sense, being intense like you are, versus the way you can do it in a sport, say, or in an artistic pursuit?
Great observation. I don't know if I've mastered that yet. And that's the reason why I work at the rate I do. And I don't think the rate I go is healthy. I'm not going to say it is, and this is something I aspire to always work at this rate. It's just I haven't figured out the right way to measure metrics of my success yet. And so I'm constantly feeling that I have to do something at all hours of the day, or every minute, or any time I'm chilling. It's like, I should be doing this. So I don't know if I've mastered that yet in terms of being able to measure metrics to go to the next thing. I think it's such a tough position because it requires doing things that like haven't been done before. So you don't have something to look back on and reference. But I can look back on some of the creative stuff we've done and say, yeah, we've definitely gotten better creatively, but it's hard to look back on and say business wise, how we measure those metrics.
I heard you say in another interview that you were working like 7 days a week. I think the interview you gave, you had taken like your first day off in a long time. It sounds like that's still true. You still are sort of that person. Do you worry about burnout? I think it's something that you hear a lot about in Web3, people burning themselves out. We just hit a bear market. Sure. You might see some people burn out in the bear market. Like, how do you think about that?
Because I absolutely love what I do. Like, this is a hobby. This is like a hobby. When you go do something, and my wife's always like, you should go golf or go do something. But like, I wake up and this is what I enjoy doing. Like, I wake up and I enjoy, doing the things that I'm doing. Do I worry about a burnout? Obviously I don't worry about burnout because it's something that I'm hyper obsessed with. But I always want to get better at scaling teams and delegating, and building a better organization that doesn't require me to always have to. Because I don't think it's also beneficial for any company to be reliant on any human being, right? It should be different kind of commanders in different tents, and so that's something that I'm actually focused on, readily right now, is scaling out the organization so that if I want to focus on something creative, I can focus on creative for a couple days or a couple weeks. If I want to focus on just the film, I can just focus on just the film,
How many people, so you said it was 2, the first Aku drop happens and it's you and Dirk. How many people are in the organization now?
So it kind of depends because it scales up and down when needed. So we can get into like our creative, but like the creative's always going to be the most robust part of the ecosystem, because for the Akutars, for example, when we scaled up to 40 something, that was because there were so many different roles and so many different things to be done. But then it can scale back down when it's a dead time. And then, so, 15 maybe right now, 15.
Wow.
15. One of the things that I'm also like, how I'm structuring kind of like the things we do and how we move, and from a business perspective, is I believe in the past you had to like have proprietary technology or software to have to build enterprise value, right? But what I'm fascinated about is how we can build real value and drive value back by leveraging things that exist already. So, for example, the technology, we use Unreal Engine that exists already with Epic. So we build a great relationship with Epic. When we do IRL events, we have an incredible partner that's also very deep into Unreal Engine. And so they can spearhead and work with our team on creative and whole event side, PR team and marketing team and brand team. Everybody's kind of interlaced, but they all got their own thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's fascinating about the way we could do things, is it doesn't require scaling teams and spending all this time scaling, internally. step leveraging things that exist in this
Yeah,
ecosystem.
there's sort of a modularity in building.
You know
that
what I
way.
mean?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, so you now brought up Unreal Engine twice, so I'm going to ask you, because in a recent interview I was asking a team about Unreal Engine. I keep hearing about it. It's very clear this is going to be an important piece, at least for the early days of the metaverse, until a better piece of tech comes around. Why did you build Akutars? Maybe give people a little context. You had Aku, you then just released Akutars. That was built with Unreal Engine. Why did you go that route? Why is it important?
So for us, we had this big meeting today about this, but so for us, linear content and storytelling is just something we're passionate about. So you think about film, you think about TV, that's something that's important to reach the masses. I don't believe the masses will be reached without that. I truly don't. I think that's our end of our roadmap, right? But how we get there is being smart and resourceful from the assets that we build. And so what Unreal Engine allows us to do is to prototype and scale virtual worlds and assets that are reusable across the different verticals that we play in. So if you look at what we did in Miami at Art Basel, there was 30,000 square foot interactive exhibit built in Unreal. Those assets were used in the chapters. Then those could be used in future content or virtual worlds. And so it's more about scalability across different verticals in our ecosystem versus in the past, us building maybe an IRL exhibit or an immersive experience. You build something for that, then you have to go build something again for a TV series, and then again for the film, and then for a game. It allows us to build quicker and ship prototypes and iterate in real time.
And the word that's coming to mind for me as you're saying that is interoperability, which we hear a lot about, we talk about metaverses, like interoperable metaverses, like, this character becomes interoperable from a back end perspective. Y'all can take him and plug him into different places.
Not just us though. Not just us. It's going to be, we built him.
Yes. Go say what you're about to say.
It's not just, we didn't design these. It's very important for people to understand interoperability between platforms. And I'm not the most technical when it comes to this, but I do have some very smart people around and just trying to learn and educate myself around it. Interoperability between platforms is just not a thing. Sandbox has a different visual language than Fortnite has a different visual language than Call of Duty, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to build them for your world, right? You need to build them for your world. But not in the not so distant future, a lot of these things that are being built in Unreal Engine should, in theory, be interoperable if you use the right use cases. So when we built the Akutars, we built them in Unreal and rigged them in Unreal. And we have our own skeleton we use for animations and things like that, but now we re-rigged the skeleton, a metahuman skeleton that anybody would be able to use and drag and drop animations and do sequencing in Unreal. And so that's what we're building out, because when I say the goal is for everybody to be able to use their Akutars and tell their own stories using their Akutars, similar to how we can. And that's where this is headed, is when you give people the tool sets and the toolbox to build environments and create and shoot inside these worlds and these environments that they're watching in the movie or watching in a TV series. That's where this is headed.
You've met with, and we're really going to dive, I think, into the film and the TV. And as much as you're willing to share about how you're building out linear content with Akutars. I said this to you earlier, but as a quick side note, I think it's hilarious. Like, I feel like I discovered you late. I think a lot of the NFT community was sort of late to discovering you, given how long you've been building. But it's hilarious to me because I'm like, all these NFT projects out there that have, maybe had more attention or more hype or whatever, all are like the holy grail is I want to be IP, I want to have movies, I want to have TV. And secretly you've been over here all along. Literally you're building, you've got a deal. You're making a movie, you're making TV. So I want to dive into all that. But, you've spent time now in Hollywood, in LA, talking to major players in that space. What is their reaction to NFTs as you've seen it? And then I want to ask you a question about, like, is there a paradigm shift happening in Hollywood, do you think, because of NFTs and this kind of content?
What is there? They just want to tell good stories. They don't care what form it comes in. They want to tell good stories. They don't care how much NFTs, the floor of an NFT project is. That's the most important piece of information is nobody knows or cares the floor price of Akutars when it comes to what we want to do with Epic or what we want to do in film or TV. It's the IP is so strong and the story is so strong that it needs to be told. And so at the core of it is its creativity reigns supreme. Strong IP that the world cares about and needs is what reigns supreme. And so are they interested in NFTs? I think they're interested in the way of building a collective audience around IP and building consumers that are orchestrating around this token, right? That can help evangelize the IP. But it's very important to note they don't need NFTs. Like, they don't need NFTs. These are billion-dollar companies, multi-million-dollar companies. I need NFTs, right? Like, how am I going to have leverage in these conversations? They don't need that. Pixar doesn't need NFTs. Fortnite doesn't need NFTs. Like, they're businesses that already exist and are very successful. So when I think about everything that we do, it's all about story. Because then I can have a conversation with the Epics and talk to them about why it's important that Aku's IP that is being built in Unreal, or these studios about why this story, or with Kiri, who Kiri's one of the best in the world at what she does. Doesn't just need to do anything. Doesn't do anything. But I can have a conversation with her about story. And it really intrigues her enough that, like, I want to devote a lot of time to this, And I think, I just think that movies and TV aren't for everybody, aren't for every project. I think can be wildly successful brands, wildly successful games. It's not the holy grail. I just think that it's for us. It is making a great film and doing it that way. But there's so many other ways to do it.
Let me get your reaction to something that I have mentioned a little bit on the podcast, but I want to probe more. I have a friend, he's also been on the show a couple times, John Rogers. He worked at Lucasfilm. He worked at Disney for many years. He was like their head of franchise, working with Pirates of the Caribbean. What is a 10-year timeline for this, those kind of things. And he has this concept of, I think he calls it an architectural innovation. And the idea is you've had these essentially paradigm shifts that have happened through the life cycles of Hollywood that can mean like a shift in consumer behavior, or maybe tapping into a particular kind of consumer behavior that means the company reorganizes the way they do business. So one of the examples would be the summer blockbuster, which I think was like a 1970s, 1980s thing. Suddenly, these Hollywood studios realized they could make more money by putting a lot of eggs in like 2 big blockbuster summer hits, rather than scattering their resources across like films coming out throughout the whole year. And that totally shifted the way that the business of Hollywood was run, and the studios that tapped into that sooner and realized that sooner did better. And he's got a couple examples like that. So his hypothesis is that NFTs are just such a frontier, that the way the world is changing to be interconnected, where you go from watching the movie to now playing the game to living in that world in some other context, is a total shift that Epic Games or Pixar doesn't need right now. But there are going to be a couple players who are going to recognize that early, shift their business models around it, and they're going to win. You're smiling, so I think you agree with this, and you're nodding in your reaction.
1,000%. It's an always on ecosystem, and everything you need for that ecosystem is in a wallet. That's the future of this. That's the future of it. If you want to go see a movie, it's in your wallet. If you want to buy some merch, it's in your wallet. If you want to buy the same merch in the virtual world, it's in your wallet. It's an always on ecosystem that is held together with a wallet, and that's really on the most basic and fundamentals of levels what this is. And now you think about, how do NFTs play into this now, right? How do Akutars play into this ecosystem? Because I get that a lot. It's like, great, Kiri's announced, film takes a while, game takes a while. Like, but what do I get now for owning Akutar? The most important piece of this is, when you have an always on ecosystem that is held together by a wallet, the possibilities are endless at the levels of tiers and levels of privilege and access that you can give people. Because if you can know what every single consumer has always bought, or how they've engaged with your IP forever, then you can create opportunities and access and privileges and rewards and all this kind of things pretty easily. And so that's how I want people to think about when they hear us talk about these long-term visions, but how does that play into it? And what do these pieces mean now? Well, there's going to be things you could do now, but in the future, like the system we're building is always on ecosystem that is connected by a wallet.
I heard you in another interview again, say something that like totally blew my mind. And you were like, and this is, I think, from a little while back. So you can tell me if this vision has changed at all, but it was like this big, hairy, audacious goal, I'd call it, right? Which is like build the Aku community big enough so that you could distribute an Aku film directly to the community, the token holders. Is that still the dream? And then I really want to dive into what that looks like and means.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that it was really fascinating about distribution, right? And why do I out here championing Unreal and Epic and what they're doing? And then there's others out there doing it. It's just they have an audience, built-in audience base, right? You can bring, powerful IP into that ecosystem, right? And reach audience. And then you just do these things and build your audience and consumer base and intelligently around wallets, around a call to action to maybe join a wallet, create a wallet, boom, 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 boom. That when it's time for a film, you can go to an AMC, you go directly to theaters and say, because I believe in theaters, like whatever, that's a personal thing. I love going to a movie theater. And I think that's the thing. And say, look, we have this many people who are part of our ecosystem. Like we've developed this like internally, like, do you want to distribute this? We have this many audience and you distribute these movie tickets as NFTs now. And so you go to the first weekend and it's a banger. Like, it's like, you can't miss this movie. And now the only way you're going to go see this is because you have the NFT. I think this is cool. I don't know if this it'll play out this way, but it's just something I think about a lot is if you have 3 million people that own a movie ticket, but now there's a secondary market for it and it's the hottest thing out there. Like, now you put the power in the consumers to tell you, if I want to see it or not. I think it's interesting. I think there's a major risk on film when you think about a lot of the money comes from the first weekend. There's so much emphasis on the first weekend. Well, if there's a snowstorm on the East Coast and the first weekend sucks, like, you can't control that. But how do you mitigate that? Well, you can have these NFTs that act as movie tickets, and now they can go see it whenever, and now there's a secondary market for it. Just something I think about.
Rarible is the NFT platform that's leading the charge into the multi-chain universe ahead of us. Available on Flow, Tezos, Polygon, and of course, Ethereum, Rarible is the perfect place for NFT newcomers, profile picture collectors, and experienced NFT traders. Rarible has a variety of NFT features that set it apart from other NFT marketplaces. They have a native messaging function allowing you to DM your friends or haggle with sellers. They also have a mobile app on iOS and Android with a built-in NFT portfolio tracker tool, so you can easily check the value of your digital art portfolio. Rarible is built on the Rarible protocol, a multi-purpose, open source, and community-governed NFT protocol that helps build products and services across the NFT ecosystem, including white label marketplaces tailored to specific NFT communities. So go to Rarible.com and start discovering and trading NFTs, putting in floor bids to join PFP communities, and DM with some brand new internet friends. If you're starting on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. This is your tool to unlock the world of DeFi and NFTs without giving up custody over your private keys. MetaMask is both a secure in-browser wallet and also a secure bridge for your hardware wallet so that you can connect to any Web3 enabled website. You can now trade tokens with any DEX or aggregator. MetaMask Swap gathers real-time pricing information across the DeFi exchange ecosystem, allowing you to select your best price while getting all of the MetaMask benefits of self-custody, lower gas costs, and increased transaction success rates. MetaMask also has a fantastic mobile wallet, which I use while I'm out and about. And I use it to collect POAPs, NFTs, and use it for all my DeFi things while I'm away from home. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask, you gotta try it out. Download MetaMask for desktop and mobile at metamask.io, or load up your Ledger, Trezor, Keystone, or Lattice hardware wallets so that they too can get into Web3.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting. So I want to separate out the theater piece for a second because I do want to dive into like distribution, getting a movie made in the traditional world, which you're an interesting person to talk about because it's hard. Well, you're learning it firsthand, and I'm excited to kind of hear what that's like through your eyes. But even separating out the theater piece, the thing that struck me as so interesting here is, if you give all your community holders an NFT, or no, if all your community holders, you're NFT holders, right? And then you say, great, this NFT gives you access to watch this movie. And you've got, I think, 1 million copies of the movie and 1 million holders. Like you're talking about something on that scale, right? It is really cool to think about. And I think the theater piece does make it more complicated, but it probably can be worked around. Cool. Now there's only 1 million copies of that film. To watch it, you have to buy an NFT from another holder. And the thing there is not that that's sustainable for the first people to buy the tickets to make a bunch of money. It's more that they could sell it, there'll be a price that it's worth. Maybe it's $15. And then I'll have been able to watch it for free. Because maybe I paid $15 to watch the movie.
That's
and
right.
now I can sell it to the next person for $15. So it's a way for me to get free content. But then the royalties, or not, maybe not free, but subsidized content. If I sell it for $15, I bought it for $15, I make $8 on it. I've now been able to watch it for $7 cheaper, whatever it is. But now you as the artist are still getting money on it. So like I can have a more cost affordable experience as an audience member, and you as the creator can still be rewarded. Like that's fascinating. I'd never thought about that. Is that the piece that gets you excited? Is it like, just like, wow, that's such a different model?
It all gets me excited.
Yeah,
it gets me excited.
Sick. Yeah.
It's all just some wild stuff.
Okay, here's my understanding of how like a Hollywood like movie works, which is a bunch of financiers come in and they're like, cool, sure, we'll give you money, executive producers, whatever, we'll give you money for this film. You go make that movie with like a studio who I believe probably owns the IP rights for the thing, maybe. All right, you're gonna correct me. And then when the movie's made, you either like sell it direct to a streamer who then like owns the publishing rights to it, or you sell it to distributors who like distribute it theatrically, all around the world. And then maybe a streamer then also still comes in later to buy it after. Mm-hmm. Is that like a correct overview, summary, correct pieces of that? And then let's talk about, is that the process you've gone through with Aku? Like how did
not that far.
All right.
Not that far out. We're developing independently.
Okay.
We have we develop independently. And what that means is, I look at it like 2 phases of development. I'm not a Hollywood expert, never made a movie before, don't know what it's like to make a movie.
Which is why I think it's so cool to get your perspective on this. Like, you're like all of us, like none of us have made movies, we're like, all right, well, how do you do this?
No. We did the deal initially with anonymous content and permanent content. It was great. They're great partners. Halfway through it, though, I realized that, look, this isn't the end of the road that I believe our potential could be the end of the road. And eventually, if we do go down this road, I'm going to have to, sell the IP, and I won't have control over this IP and no longer be able to drive value back to the thing I care about most, and that's my community. And so, but that deal expired, and that's when Kiri and Steven came in and developed it internally. And what that development phase looks like is story outline. You pick out a test scene. This is how our process works. I can't speak for any other movie. So
no, I'm so excited. This is fascinating.
So we sat down for hours, days, developing a story outline. Come back. No, that's not working. That's not working. And there's still stuff in there right now that's not working, right? Develop this outline. From that outline now, we take a test scene. We say, let's do this one. Let's go give this to the creative team. What's the visual language look like? This is where Unreal is nice because we can prototype and iterate in real time. I think Unreal could eventually produce a feature-length film inside Unreal, but right now it serves the purpose of test scenes and getting that visual language, the style, all that down. And then from there, just congruently or at this a little bit after, we start going to script development and, script, and then boom. Then it goes to the main thing, make the thing, and at that point, that's when you have those conversations around financing. But up to this point, I'm paying for it.
You're self-funding it. Wow. So let me just get specific here. You said you did a deal with anonymous content, which is a big deal.
Great.
Big names behind it. All that. When you say you did a deal, what does that mean? You optioned it to them. Is that right?
That's right. Basically what that means is they have an option to be able to develop this and what we're doing now. And then
they would run that process of everything you're now doing independently.
Fund it, yep, and then take it to a studio to develop it and make it.
But you realize if you walked down that path, at some point the IP would no longer be yours. Would it be anonymous content? Would it be the studios?
Yeah, I mean that's right. It would be something around the studios, and that's really how it shakes down. We'll cross the bridge when we get there on how you want to finance this thing. I bet on myself. I always will. And I always will bet on Kiri and Steven. and the team we got over here on the animation side, that, it's a film. Now, I mean, we've been reviewing the outline this week, and it's like, man, this is good. Like, this is no bullshit. Like, this is unique, and it's really good. So we just bet on that, and bet on the fact that someone's going to want to show this.
Do you have, like, can you give any insight, into, well, I guess I have sort of two competing questions here. One is, my guess, having listened now to interviews with you and read a bunch about you and stuff, and feeling like I have a certain sense of you, is like part of the maintaining the IP is it's really sort of so also the holders can maintain the IP. We'll talk about commercial rights. My understanding is that we don't actually have rights over the Akus or Akutars the way you do with like a Bored Ape ecosystem, but you were obviously incredibly community oriented. So by you maintaining control of the IP, that allows you to figure out how to incorporate the community. Do I have that right? Can you speak a little bit about how you think about that?
Yeah, that's it. It's so that we can evolve over time. Like, everybody wants to see a roadmap, right? Everyone wants a roadmap. And the one thing I hate about roadmaps, it does not allow for innovation. In 5 months from now, I might come up with something or learn something that we could do that, boom, is going to really ignite this thing, or in 3 months or 2 months, something might just boom, like that makes sense. Let's do this. Roadmaps constrict you to certain things that you have to execute on that are just kind of like set in like time that now. I can't predict what this world or the technology is going to allow us to do in a year, but so I don't like that. But I do like rewarding the community. Like I always say, like I could have gone and done the movie route right after the chapters and kick my feet up. The chapters are going to be the chapters because like it's tied to the Aku story. It's like comic books, and kick my feet up and made the movie and been this thing, right? But we didn't do that. like we said, no, like we're going to bring this back. We're going to do the hardest thing we could possibly do, develop it independently. And we're doing that because we want to drive value back to the community. Like pure, blank, simple. I'm going to have to make sacrifices. My family must make sacrifices. So like whenever somebody says like, whenever I saw this stuff afterwards, like this team, like how can you build and rebuild, or how focused or dedicated you are? It's like, dude, we had the path, like with an incredible IP. Could have just been chilling. It will catch you in 3 years when the film comes out. We said no, like we're going to do that. And so when I think about that, it's because I just want to be able to innovate and integrate the community and all the value driving opportunities that we can create back to them, pure and simple. Mm-hmm. And around commercial rights, right now, yeah, like we contain commercial rights over Akutars. That's not to say in the future that those don't unravel and give them to the community. I just think it needs to be done thoughtfully when you're dealing with an IP at this stage. It needs to be done in a way that isn't just free for all. There needs to be really thoughtful conversations with the community as well around different ways that you can see these being utilized. I think actually commercial rights around Akutars would be massively powerful. It'd be some of the first fully 3D rigged, highly visceral characters that people can create stories around, even if it just was to make a fun NFT with their family. I think that's really crazy, especially with the tools that we can deliver them that makes it simple.
I really like that answer because I've said I think you're gonna have to see really interesting and successful IP come out of this, the NFT world with a whole range of rights attached to them. Like I think you've got the Gary V model on one end, which is sort of where you fall, right? Where he retains a lot of that control. And I'm like very okay with that because he has a vision. You are somebody with a vision. Like I'd rather you guys go make this character valuable because I trust you as the driver of this and I trust your vision. And like that's really valuable to me. And then there are other projects, and you've got obviously Bored Apes and World of Women and really cool things where I think there's tons of potential for really cool stuff to come out of the community owning in, and then there's CCO projects that are totally in the Creative Commons. I think there's cool stuff that can come out of that, but it's understanding what bet you're making in each scenario. And in a case like this where this character is so personal to you, this story is so personal to you, like I'd rather just have you go drive it and create the value, and I'll sit here as a holder and like enjoy the community. Like I think that's, but I think being thoughtful, and there's probably individual places where you can share it out. That's great. And Lucasfilm, I mean, they were very, very protective over their IP for a long time. And I think over time kind of had to relent to like, okay, there's fan fiction. This is actually good for us. Let's loosen our ideas around this a little bit. So,
yeah, I'm actually a big fan of all of it, of creative, giving creative control and freedom to the community. I actually am, because it's exciting to see people tap into their creativity. It unburdens us from having to constantly produce creative content, that it keeps them engaged. And I'm not against it. I think, it has to be thoughtful. And I think the tooling has to be there to make it something that, there is quality control over things as well. You don't just want a bunch of bad things with your brand floating around. There's quality control.
Yes, I think there's such a distinction to be made between letting fans go and create, again, things along the lines of almost fan fiction or things that they love, and monetizing that up to a certain point. There's something very different between that and then losing control of your brand's identity because you have a ton of people making a ton of different storylines, a ton of different projects, and losing the core of what makes Aku so special, which is this feeling that it has that is clearly sort of something is you.
Let me ask you a question though. Let me ask you your opinion on something. Do you think that do you look at Aku differently than you look at Akutars?
Well, that's really interesting. So it depends on what context you're saying. I was actually going to say, I've had this thing for a little while where I felt like Akus were so obviously undervalued because the Akutars were getting bid up, we're looking at like 3.5 ETH, and you had these Akus sitting there for like 0.4 ETH. And I'm like, man, these are these 10 chapters, the originals, like you've been really upfront being like, hey, I will always reward my original holders. I'm like, this is the obvious play. Like they're so undervalued compared to the Akutars. That's not what you're asking, I don't think, but I am curious to get your reaction to that. No, I think of them, I guess I think of the Akus as like collectible items and the Akutars maybe as more playable characters. So in that standpoint, I think of them a little bit differently, but I think of them both as just doing well as the Aku world and the character of Aku grows in prominence.
Mm-hmm. One thing I actually do think about in real time is Aku, the IP Aku, the kid that we all come and know, and the Akutars, which are so vastly different and have distinct real personalities to them. I think about them differently, and something like more recently, as one.
So
explain
that. Explain that for folks.
Well, I think like Aku, right? When we build out the film, it's going to be geared towards families, right? The ecosystem that they play in will look maybe differently than you're going to have 2.5-year-olds and 3-year-olds in the theaters, right? We're also making it super dope, so you're going to have all kind of like this a cultural moment. I look at it like, but then you have the Akutars that have a lot of distinct personalities and styles and like ability to create backstories with those. And I actually, like today, I would say I see them as like independent in a way. Sure, Akutars will always be attached to Aku themselves, right? But I also see us being able to do things with Akutars that we couldn't really do with Aku the brand. And I also see things that we could do with Aku the brand that necessarily don't make sense within the Akutar ecosystem. The Akutar ecosystem is, I look at it as like the core base of adults who have like real stake in the thing that they are watching be built. Aku is what my daughter and my nephews and families will enjoy and recognize for years and years to come, hopefully. And so I often think about what if we did give commercial rights to the Akutars? Would it really hurt the brand of Aku, if Aku is really this thing over here and Akutars are here playing in this world? Think about it. I think about it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the kind of thoughts that should be going into this stuff. I think it is a really serious decision to make, is like, how can you make sure you don't dilute a central brand while still allowing people to, optimizing people's creativity and the community for what it is. Do you follow the Deadheads project at all? I've interviewed them, but I've also referenced them on the show a couple times because I think they've done some really interesting things. They're an animation studio. They're creating a show based on these characters, deadheads. They're like zombies, and you own your individual character, but if you go and make something unique with it, you can't use the deadhead's name. And then what they have is basically like it's sort of like staking, where you can stake your character into a casting pool.
Yeah.
And then they'll cast your character, into, if they pick your character and cast it in the show, that's a way they can get around like SEC stuff to like provide you with royalties and whatever, because they've now cast your character in their series. So I think that's a really interesting, like fun way that creative way I see people playing with characters and IP.
Yeah, I got some ideas around that. If we wanted to pull this lever here, I do have some ideas around it. Make sure that it stays in bounds and respectful and things like that. I like that shit. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, I like that shit. Like I like the stuff that seeing people come up with the Bored Apes, and I like what seeing like the pixel vaults and I envy some of the stuff that they're able to do. And I'm a fan. I'm really a fan.
Well, I think there's some really cool things you can do because you already do have the relationships with Hollywood, and you have some of these really, like the Aku movie comes out, it's a big success. Like you sort of plant a flag around what Aku is and what it stands for, and you let that build itself up first before you start diluting it. Then, somebody in the community does have this amazing backstory they've created for their Akutar, and now like that does get incorporated into like the Netflix series now that comes out. Like that's the kind of future that's so amazing when you think about, community and, content creation.
Well, the thing about what we're kind of the way I'm trying to move is not so dependent on streaming platforms. Like you said, like
love this.
Maybe it'll be on the Netflix. It doesn't need to be on Netflix to reach the mass audience. People on TikTok got more viewers and more followers than shows get on Netflix. People on YouTube got more views and followers than shows get on Netflix. There's no knock on Netflix. I think it'd be great to have Aku on Netflix. It's just, I think there's other things that you could do to distribute content than just looking at streaming platforms that don't require any kind of deal or negotiation,
If you're thinking linear content, like I think of linear as like TV and film. Maybe that's too narrow a view of it.
Yeah,
but
when my daughter wants to watch TV, she cuts on YouTube. My nephew want to watch, they cut on YouTube. I think there's ways for communities. If we did want to say, okay, everybody has, the ability to create content. Here are the tools. Here's your 3D rig. Here's your skeleton. Here's some, base animations to make content. There's distribution out there. We're building worlds and environments that can be used in content, should be used in content, will be used in content. The distribution is not going to be an issue when you have a hyper visceral community that wants to see the dopest content with the characters that they own. Distribution is going to be wherever that community goes.
Yeah, you're Doodles, who I really respect as a project tremendously.
Love
Poopy
Doodles.
said the same thing to me. I did the same exact thing. I was like, Netflix, and he was like, whoa. I'm not just thinking about Netflix. I don't know if I care about now. And so it's really interesting to hear both of you, who I think are some of the savviest people out there, and the way you're thinking about this. Both of you said that now. So, as if Netflix needed any more hit to its brand and stock this week.
Look, I love. I
No,
love Netflix. It's just that when I think about Bored Apes, I don't know how many followers they got. I don't know anything about the community. All I know is when somebody famous or somebody does something, they tweets about them, it's pandemonium. Yeah. When the Bored Apes say something, it's pandemonium. How many times do you see the Bored Apes founders saying something? The community says it for them. And so if you think about, you build a community that visceral and that like hyper engaged, they're going to go to whatever platform they want to go to see these Akutars or these, characters come to life. It's pandemonium. Especially when they're like real good quality. It's not just some rinky-dink thing. These are designed by the same guy that Emmy Award winner. They're lit by the same guy that lit Jurassic World and Ready Player One. It's like they're created by all these amazing people. Now you get to go enjoy them and create content with them. I don't know. I'm saying I'm interested in it.
Totally. All right, and I know there's probably a couple years, but you've given us a sense of where you are right now. You're in this development process, thinking through storylines, starting to do some test scenes. How long does this take? And you've got both the movie process? And then I know you're talking gaming. Like I know you've got a whole things you're building out. We're talking a couple years, a few years. What's your timeline estimate?
You want the roadmap? Carly, you gonna hit me with the roadmap question?
I didn't use the word. I knew it was triggering, so I didn't use the word roadmap.
You gonna hit me with the roadmap? No, it's not what people think it is that we're really building. Is everything we're building is building towards a film. Okay, everything we're building is also building towards a series that will be before the film. And so when we think about these environments, and you need scenes, and I think about environments, think about if you want to make a scene in Aku's city, you're going to need to make the city and animate in a 3D version of it. That's an asset that could be used in virtual world.
Oh, that's so cool.
So
and then you can kind of Easter egg this stuff out to the community,
all
early
day,
leading
all
up to
day, all day long. And then you just do things very methodically. You have to know what the series is. You have to have a story Bible to understand what the story is so that you aren't making things harder for yourself down the line. Once you have that, then you can do this. Then you can run this play of building out environments that are interactive. And then all of a sudden the world starts looking like this and like this and like this. And then it's like, damn, like that was the world I was just playing this whole time. And we could ship updates over time, constant updates. I don't think the tech's there yet from the ability to create these immersive experiences in Unreal. Like our immersive experience that I'm talking about, where you're going to really have these real-time rendering, you're playing with the Akutars, might be a couple months, might be 6 months, might be 8 months, right? Might be 12 months until there's a series. But there's things out there right now that we can deliver and ship to people that are engaging, but then when the lights turn on to this space, trade. Here, boom, I got you. Like, you want to come, here's your spot, here's your spot. Because I also don't believe in high-priced in-game assets and these. I believe in accessibility and microtransactions. That's what I believe. And so when it comes to this, like, I just don't want to, take advantage of people and we build this. It's just like, here you go, man, just go, have fun.
Yeah. 2 final questions. One's a little bit of a pivot, just the on the athlete front. You were sort of talking about this, leaving professional sports, trying to figure out what you were going to do next. I think this is a story you hear commonly from athletes, even athletes sometimes who've done incredibly well and made a lot of money, and then you hear the story where a decade later, they're hurting from they're cash strapped or whatever. Do you think there's a place for NFTs, for current athletes now? You see a lot of athletes getting into the space, ways they can leverage building up their community with NFTs, things that can help position them for post-athlete lives or transitioning?
I think it's hard right now because of the nature of the industry is so demanding and it needs something at all times that I think is distracting for an athlete to build its own community and basically start their own project, because they're always going to be hit with when announcement, when product, when
utility,
when utility. And there's going to be so much pressure on them to keep the floor price up. I suggest to athletes and friends and influential people to always look for communities to join and integrate into, because it's much better to add value to the thing that's already cooking than to try to launch your own that you're responsible for all day, every day.
Awesome. Okay, final question. My understanding is your nephew asked, can astronauts be black? That was the inspiration behind Aku. Is that right? Started as my paintings first, though. Okay. Oh, your paintings were inspired from hearing your nephew ask that, right? How's your nephew today? What did you think of Aku? Give us the update on that story.
He's really fun. Has no idea that I'm behind any of it or anything, but he always comes over and he loves to watch it. Like, thoroughly. So
he doesn't know you're behind it, and then loves the character.
Yeah. He just wants to see. He thinks it's just
always on at the house. How old is he?
6. Oh, that's the best. That's the best thing for me. You see, a lot of times in interviews, I don't reference him. Like I say, a young boy. I don't want him to ever recognize that. I think it'd be really special for him to enjoy this as a kid, this character, and just be inspired by the character, independent of. Yeah. He just loves it. He really does. Like, He loves it. Yeah. It's super fun.
Are you gonna tell him someday that you're like
He'll
behind it?
figure it
Like,
out.
you know?
Yeah, he'll figure it out at some point. Yeah, he'll figure it out at some point. My hope. I just want him to enjoy it. Just if you go look back on Super Rare, some of my first works. There's some that are animated. That's the origin of it.
So cool. Micah, is there anything about the origin that you feel like we missed? We're basically at time here, but is there anything interesting parts of your story that like we didn't touch on? Interesting points you want to make?
No, this is good. You're good at this. You asked the tough question.
Thank you. You make it easy. Like you're fascinating. You're doing awesome stuff. It makes it very easy. You're
No, you can for real. This is good. It makes me, it makes me want to like keep talking, and you get all the alpha because you keep, just ask a really good question. This is good.
I'm a nerd too. It's just I love this stuff. I just love nerding out.
Who else is a nerd here?
That's fair.
No,
you definitely have me on cool factor. I'm not good at sports. Awesome, Micah. Well, thank you so much, truly. And you're gonna I saw you're at VCon. I'm gonna be at VCon, so I'm gonna come find you, say hello.
Cool.
I really, really enjoyed this. So thanks so much for hopping on.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.